I've made a fair amount of videos about games at this point, and I felt it appropriate to branch out into something else that I wanted to try on this channel. I wanted to make a series wherein I watch a selection of anime that are currently airing, around 2 to 3 episodes, and come to the conclusion of if it's worth watching, not worth watching, or possibly somewhere in between. The point being for you, the viewer, to get a general idea of what the shows are this season and if they're worth watching. Of course, some of this will come down to personal taste, and yours may vary from that of mine. However, there are some points of objectivity when it comes to discussing if an anime is decent or not. I think most will agree that there are many downright terrible anime that should not be watched at all, something that no rational person would recommend. Glass slip. And I also can't watch every show, so I've taken a selection of shows that look appealing to me or are from a noteworthy studio or source material. I might make another video at the end of the season when I've seen some of these shows in their entirety, maybe in the form of a list like I'm going to do here, or possibly separate reviews, but that ultimately depends on how things go. That's enough about me and my channel though, so let's get on to the winter 2016 anime season. First up, we have Boku Dakeigai Inai Machi, or Erased. This show was adapted from a manga series that I've never heard of, and was produced by A1 Pictures, who can be incredibly hit or miss, mostly miss in my book. But this show is actually really good so far. It's about this 29-year-old guy that works a minimum wage job and kind of regrets his past and life decisions that led him to where he is now. But he has some sort of supernatural ability that will randomly put him 5 minutes back into the past in order to prevent some sort of disaster. The first half of the first episode plays out like a cliched main character saves girl or child from traffic accident, but by the end of the first episode it becomes extremely dark. We learn of the traumatic experience the main character had as a child, where a serial killer abducted and murdered many of his classmates in middle school. The person convicted for these crimes is someone who the main character knew personally, and he can't come to terms with the murderer being that person. After many years of trying to forget, he just can't shake the feeling that something is wrong, that his friend was wrongly prosecuted, which leads to him investigating the events of his childhood more closely. I'm trying to be as vague and unspoilery as possible, but this curiosity eventually leads to someone close to the main character being killed, presumably by the real child abductor. This event triggers the main character's ability, except instead of going back 5 or 10 minutes, he goes back many, many years, as is required to prevent the events that lead to the death of that person. At this point, the show completely changes, and it becomes an emotional endeavor to prevent the death of his classmates and change the outcome of the life that he is so regretful of. On a visual level, after the time shift, the show is quite good looking. While the animation is rather average, the cinematography and overall aesthetic is quite reminiscent of the first chapter of 5 centimeters per second. However, it's definitely not as visually impressive or detailed as that. I'm really impressed by the 2 episodes I've seen so far, and if Erased can maintain that level of drive and quality that it has demonstrated thus far, it has show of the season potential. Erased is without a doubt a watch. If you only have the time or patience for one show for this season, this is definitely your show right here. I especially recommend it for those who enjoyed stuff like Anohana or 5 centimeters per second like I mentioned earlier. So far, it seems to have more in common with those than it does other mystery shows. Next up, Myriad Colors Phantom World, this being famed Studio Kyoto Animation's newest project. I feel somewhat obligated to watch everything that KyoAni makes, simply because of the legendary projects they have under their belt, but I can't say I was a huge fan of their last 2 shows, Amagi Brilliant Park and Hibiki Euphonium. Unfortunately, that trend continues for me with this light novel adaptation, Myriad Colors Phantom World. This being a Kyoto Animation show, it of course is visually beautiful, top-notch animation, stunning backgrounds, and a vibrant, high-contrast color palette that is ever so slightly muted, that kind of reminds me of Humanity Has Declined in some ways. But in the story department, Phantom World has been super disinteresting thus far. The setup is some bullshit about a terrorist bombing of a biotech plant that releases some sort of mind-altering bacteria, and some young, of course, high school-aged people got powers from it and work for their school by using their powers. I hate to remind people of it, but it's essentially Charlotte, except man-made instead of a stupid fucking comet. There's 4 main characters so far, in addition to a quiet, mysterious one that I'm sure is going to explain her troubled background and then join the group in the next 2 episodes, only to somehow hit a roadblock halfway through the series where she feels slighted by the group and becomes antisocial again. But it was all just a misunderstanding and she comes back 1 episode later. The token male main character isn't too bad, and I kind of like this girl's character and her character design. And this fairy thing is pretty entertaining, has its moments. And then we have this blatant fan service character. You all know who I'm talking about. There's a GIF. I'm not fucking showing it. I refuse to. I assumed the GIF was super out of context, but it really isn't. Every time this girl uses her powers, it necessitates her groping her own chest. And every single fucking time it happens, the male main character catches a glimpse and gets embarrassed. Typical. Together they all get assigned jobs to take down monsters, phantoms, whatever, blah blah blah, that everyone can see because they got their brains altered by the magic bacteria. It's all really predictable stuff and par for course, only saved by the gorgeous visuals. And I wouldn't expect that to change as the episodes continue. Sadly, I'm going to have to say that Myriad colors Phantom World as a don't watch so far, unless you're a huge fan of Kyoto animation or just beautiful visuals in general. Alright, here we go. Sushi Police is the Abunai Sisters of Winter 2016. If you're not familiar with Abunai Sisters, that is code for do not watch this. I could try to explain the premise of Sushi Police, but it would be better and more entertaining for me to tell you what Sushi Police thinks it is. With 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games around the corner, there's a worldwide sushi boom. But what to do with all the bastardized sushi out there? The Japanese government's urgent response is to team up with other ruling powers around the world to establish the World Food Culture Conservation Organization, WFCO, to protect and promote authentic local cuisine. And so the WFCO deploys its 9th Division to oversee Japanese cuisine abroad. The 9th Division, aka Sushi Police, is notorious for their aggressive conduct, and they hassle anyone serving unauthentic Japanese I promised I wouldn't laugh, and I am. Hassle anyone serving unauthentic Japanese food in the United States, Russia, France, China, etc. They will resort to any means necessary to eliminate bad sushi. Soon they are despised by restaurant proprietors around the world. Okay, look, I know that sushi has a deep historical origin story, and that it's very culturally important, but this is just fucking stupid. It doesn't end there, though. You've probably noticed by now that Sushi Police is visually reprehensible, and thankfully for you, I'm not cruel enough to show you what it looks like in motion. Don't watch Sushi Police. Please. I can't stop you from doing it, but please don't. Save yourself. PA Works have been responsible for some really uniquely bad stuff. Glasslip and Charlotte come to mind. But they have some incredible gems under their belt too. Nagi no Asukara and Hanasaku Iroha. And now possibly this show, Haru Chica, too, if they don't fuck it up. This being PA Works, it's of course very pretty to look at. The backgrounds in particular can be quite stunning. And backgrounds really seem to be their specialty. The character designs are striking as well. The eyes kind of remind me of Danganronpa. According to MAL, this is adapted from a normal novel too, not a light novel, so I have to assume credit for the character designs goes to PA Works or at least someone on their staff. As far as the plot goes, Haru Chica bills itself as being a mystery slice of life, romance, and school. Not sure where they're getting the romance tag from, maybe that comes further down the line. But it's called Haru Chica because those are the names of the two leads we follow, a female and male, that were childhood friends that reunite after a 9-year hiatus in their high school music club. So far, I quite like both of these characters. The girl is kind of bombastic, but wants to be like a poised, pretty girl. And the boy is soft-spoken, somewhat effeminate. He reminds me of this character from Nagi Asukara. And we get this slice of life fix from these two going to their music club, but that's complemented by mysteries that the male lead has a propensity to solve, very reminiscent of Hyoka, which is a compliment. Haru Chica, I would say, is a watch. Every season there seems to be one show that gets turned into a million GIFs and becomes, for lack of a better term, the meme show of the season. I hate saying that. I think I found the next one of those right here, though. I've watched 2 episodes, and it took a lot of willpower to do that, as I was bored to tears during those 40 or so minutes. So then how is this anime Facebook fodder, you might ask? Quite simple. You've got this one female character that looks like someone you may remember, mixed with moments where she has innocent intent, but phrases her thoughts in such a way that sounds sexually charged trope. Mix that together with the very few scenes that have bombastic animation, and you've got a show that will provide many a Tumblr GIF for those who are blissfully unaware of the context. The context really is just boring as fuck, too. Our main character male wants to be a manga artist because status quo, but his father adamantly asserts that he wants his son to take over the family business of running a candy junk food store in bumblefuck central Japan. On second thought, I can't really blame him for the manga thing. It's business as usual for our main character until crazed lunatic Facebook anime page gif girl walks in and demands to meet the character's father. That's where all semblance of a plot ceases to exist. The rest of the show thus far is just this girl fucking around in this rural town, inconveniencing literally every person she comes across. By the way, where's she living? Which will, in her mind, eventually convince the father to join her candy store collective, which is important. Why? This show is supposed to be a comedy, though, so the plot shortcomings and sometimes hideous character designs could be forgiven, I guess, but that's not the case, seeing as the comedy is at the same level as a low-tier Twitch streamer screaming into the camera like a toddler. Every joke is about some form of novelty candy and relies heavily upon our favorite girl screaming at the top of her lungs, while some anthropomorphized anime candy dances on the screen. Admittedly, I don't live in Japan, so maybe, just maybe, these jokes are lost on me because I'm not intimately familiar with the colloquialisms that these scenes revolve around. I fucking doubt it, though. I'm sorry to all of you that might like or love this show, but before you leave me a nasty comment, consider reveling in the fact that you are enjoying something that I cannot. For everyone else that's not in that group, please don't watch this. Konosuba, or God's Blessing on This Wonderful World, is the epitome of slightly, barely above average, mindless enjoyment anime. It's another light novel adaptation, and it's about this loser otaku guy that dies and goes to the afterlife and is given the option to go to an alternate reality. He ends up tricking a goddess into going with him, and the alternate world is really just a real-life fantasy MMO. It's very similar to Familiar of Zero or Sword Art Online. The visuals and animation are average across the board, and the two main characters we've been introduced to so far are alright. I'd say only watch this if you're interested in some mindless entertainment. Otherwise, for the vast majority of you, this is a pass. And finally, to finish things off, we've got the sequel to Gate here, which was a decent show that I had a lot of fun watching back when the first season aired, and it's just more of the same here. The plot is quite interesting, and the characters are relatively likable. If you're not familiar with what Gate is at all, it's about a portal that opens up in the Ginza district to another world that allows a medieval army to come through and slaughter civilians. After the situation is contained, the army is sent through the portal to investigate the other world. If you've seen the first season of Gate, I'm sure you're already watching this second season. But if you haven't seen any of Gate, I definitely recommend watching both seasons. I'm aware that there's many more shows airing this season that I didn't cover here on this list. And if you're watching something that I didn't have on this list that you're really enjoying and loving a lot, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Let me know down below. Otherwise, thanks for watching.